This is Exodus chapter 22, part 3, and I'm going to interpret this as follows. Let's say we have two guys, Bob and Bill. Bob and Bill are neighbors. Bob wants to go over to Bill and borrow Bill's ox because maybe Bob's oxen are sick and they can't plow the field, so he has to have Bill's ox to help him plow the field. And so Bill loans Bob his ox. And that's where we're getting the scenario here, okay? And it says, if a man borrows anything from his neighbor and it becomes injured or dies, okay? Anything interpreted here would be something live, okay? And usually this would be about an ox. The owner of it not being with it, okay? Bill has loaned his oxen to Bob. But Bill didn't go along with the oxen, okay? Then, if the animal becomes injured or dies because Bob is working with it, okay, then he shall make restitution to Bill for the oxen that was lost. Now, if Bob comes to Bill and says, hey, look, I want to borrow one of your oxen and I need to borrow you at the same time to help me plow this land, well, Bill comes with the ox, helps Bob plow the land. Now, if the oxen dies then, Bill is with the oxen, Bill can do something about the oxen, then therefore, it says, if the owner was with it in that particular scenario, he shall not make it good, for it was hired, it came for its hire. Okay. So basically, the money that Bob pays Bill for Bill bringing his oxen over to help Bob, that would be what would cover the oxen being injured or dying. Alright. If a man entices a virgin who is not betrothed, okay, this would be a guy, he's met this gal is not engaged to get married to anybody, and the guy lies with her, he shall surely pay the bride price for her to be his wife. Back in those days, you didn't just go up to the gal and say, hey, let's go get hitched, and then they did. You actually got to go to her father and pay him a certain amount of a certain sum so that he would let her be married to you. Isn't that nice? In modern days, that wouldn't be quite as practical, but the idea behind it is kind of practical because the father's supposed to be wise enough to see that this kid either can or cannot take care of his daughter. And if this kid can't take care of his daughter, then he is certainly not going to give the daughter away. Okay. If the father, after finding out about this illicit sexual encounter, refuses to give this wimpy kid his daughter, the wimpy kid shall pay money according to the bride price of virgins. So, the kid is still going to pay the father of this beautiful lady money, but he's not going to be able to keep the beautiful daughter. Most likely he'll probably get stoned. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Why not? Because God is the one that says, I know the future. And when you're going to a sorceress, basically you're saying God is not sufficient enough to tell you what your future is going to be. And that's a big insult to God. God's saying, you mean to tell me you're turning to somebody else to find out your future when I know it already? And I'll tell you how much I want you to know, and I will make sure you don't know other things. Alright. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. Nothing would be more grotesque than to have sex with your farm animals, or better yet, with your pets. That's just disgusting. And because it's disgusting and perverted, you can die. He who sacrifices to any god except the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. This would involve animal sacrifices, human sacrifices. Pagan religions endorse these kind of things. And God said, hey, you do that in front of me, guess what? I'll kill you. And if I don't kill you, somebody else will, but you're going to die. You shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay? What I meant basically was, if a stranger comes into town, you're to sell to him just like you would one of your own family members. You're to treat him like you would treat your own family members. Likewise, if he's just coming into town and you haven't captured him by war, then you're not to enslave him either. You wouldn't enslave a family member, you're not going to enslave this guy. That was what was meant by that. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. In those days, being a widow or being a fatherless child was a really hard thing to be. And now you're going to make their lives more miserable than they already were? No. If you afflict them in any way, and they cry out at all to me, I shall surely hear their cry. Let me tell you something. If a widow or a fatherless child cries out to God because you have afflicted them, God's not going to be too happy about that. And my wrath will become hot. This is God speaking. God saying, my wrath will become hot. Alright? And God says, I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows and your children fatherless. In other words, you oppressed a widow, you oppressed a fatherless kid. Guess what? Now your kids are going to be fatherless and your wife's going to be a widow. Bye-bye. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like a moneylender to him. You shall not charge him interest. In other words, if you lend money to your best friend, if you lend money to your neighbor, if you loan money to a family member, you're not going to charge interest the same way as you would a stranger. If you ever take your neighbor's garment as a pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down, whether the neighbor has repaid you or not. For that is his only covering. If it is his garment for his skin, what shall he sleep in? And will it be that when he cries to me, I will hear? For I am gracious. Probably in this kind of a situation, it would be like, I want to borrow your shovel. So I give you my cloak until this shovel is brought back to you. So the guy brings the shovel back, you give him back his cloak. And let's say the guy broke the shovel, he brings you back the broken pieces, you still have to give him his cloak back. And if the guy for some reason doesn't bring your shovel back to you, you can charge him for the crime, but you still have to give him his cloak back. You shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people. Okay. This would involve hexing. Okay. You've heard of curses, hexes. You're not supposed to place a devastating curse on your leader. You don't like your leader, vote your leader out. But you don't put a hex on him. You shall not delay to offer the first of your ripe produce and your juices. The firstborn of your sons shall give to me. Basically, God's saying this. Look, I'm going to supply you with so much, there's no reason why you can't give me the first fruits. That's showing that you have a priority in life and God is first in your life. That's what the whole thing about the first fruits was all about, was to show that God was the highest priority in your life. If He's not the highest priority, you need to adjust your settings on your life, basically. And He also was showing don't hem-haw around. If you got the first fruits, do it then. Don't stand there and wait around until the first fruits are corrupted or in some way, and then try to offer it. God doesn't like that. Likewise, you shall do with your oxen and your sheep. It shall be with its mother 7 days. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. Okay. Oxen and sheep grow up pretty fast. Not like human beings. Then you're to give them over to God. In this case, it would probably be a sacrifice or something like that. And you shall be holy men to me. You shall not eat meat torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. In other words, you find a beast that's been mauled by another beast. Don't stand there and say, hey, that's roadkill, that's dinner. Instead, feed it to the dogs. That was to prevent the spreading of disease. And thus, that concludes Exodus chapter 22. If you have any comments, you can go ahead and leave them down here below. I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.